Moving forward to the next session, I would like to invite Gautam Billa, Senior Director, Pre-Sales and System Engineering, Ciena International, for his keynote address on how to align network slicing and private networks. Gautam Billa is a Senior Director of Field Systems Engineering at Ciena, India, where he is responsible for all pre-sales, business development, and solution engineering activities in the India region. Prior to joining Ciena in 2011, Billa held various engineering positions at Cisco, Nortel, and Reliance Communications in packet, optical, and network management. Billa completed a degree in electronics from Mumbai University. He has also completed a certification in negotiation from Harvard Business School. Over to you, Mr. Gautam.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Voice&Data, for having me here today on this session and for the opportunity to share my thoughts around this important technology. I think all of us are convinced that 5G as a technology is going to touch each and every aspect of our life going forward, and it will play a big role in actually shaping our future. My name is Gautam Billa, and I run system engineering for Ciena's international business. So for the next 10 odd minutes, I will just take you through the build up to 5G, and we've all come a long way. I'm just going to take you through the journey with a couple of charts just from a reference purpose. So let me just share my screen and dive in. Again, as we dive in, let me just take a couple of minutes to harp on the statement, we've come a long way. What do I actually mean by that statement? Now, I started my first high-tech job when I was 5 years old, right? And my job description included running to a flashing screen and actually controlling some very specific knobs which were connected to complex circuitry in a black box. And this is what I'm talking about, right? Yes, I was a human remote control back in the day when my family used to actually sit and watch the 8 p.m. serials. So this was long back. We've come a long way since then. I also actually, my job description also included troubleshooting some critical errors, right? So I think since then onwards, we've come a long way. And very recently, I was at a place where they had one of these old televisions, right? And it took me about 10 minutes to convince my daughter that this was not a microwave. What has happened since the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s is we've moved from black and white into a colored generation, and there's a lot of content which got created. Now, the real revolution from a content perspective actually started around 2010 timeframe. And this little device here actually took away my job. We built a lot of content since then. And according to a research from or a white paper from IDC, it's an interesting one. What it states or what the term that it refers to is something called as the global data sphere, right? And what it does is it measures the total amount of content that we create in the world. As you all see on the screen, we'll be creating about 175 zettabytes of content by 2025. Now, just to put that into perspective, if somebody had to actually download all that content on a standard 25 Mbps internet connection, it would take them 1.8 billion years to do that. So that's the amount of content that we are talking about. Now, with that background, let me just move into the build up to 5G. Now, even this industry has actually gone through a lot of phases. So let's just go through what it takes and where we've come. The first phase actually was all about connectivity and users, or I would say connectivity and coverage. Connectivity is basically the geographical connectivity of the network and how many subscribers could we actually get from a network perspective. And it was all about voice. Phase 2 came in, and phase 2 was actually driven by data. And this actually triggered the data-driven economy. We all saw what happened when Jio launched in India in 2016, how the data traffic actually shot up. We actually went from somewhere in the 30s in terms of ranking to #1 position in the world in terms of data consumption. Now, we all needed some place to actually host this data, and that's how the data centers and the cloud ecosystem started growing. Now, content and connectivity is a very powerful combination. And if you actually see the number of startups and the overall business ideas that these put together have generated, uh, companies like Uber, Ola, Zomato, Swiggy, right? All these guys actually rely on two things: content and connectivity. So I think it's a very powerful combination to create business models, and that's exactly what happened in so many different startups and disruptive technologies. Now let's look at what an example that happened in the IT market. The enterprises were actually busy buying a lot of hardware, software services, their servers, CPUs, storage, etc., from directly from the OEMs and putting them on-prem in their premises, right? And then came the generation of AWS, Azure, and GCP, where they started actually carving out a piece of this IT market and getting it into the public cloud. And we all know how the public cloud has actually grown. Now, the exact same phenomena is actually happening in the retail market as well. If I actually quantify the retail market, it's about the Indian retail market is almost reaching about $1 trillion. So you can imagine the opportunity that is getting created. The e-commerce players, again, like Amazon, the Flipkarts, the Mintras, the big baskets, these guys are actually siphoning out a pie for themselves from the retail market by getting things online. The COVID situation has only kind of fast tracked the situation, right? So think about it: a $1 trillion market and e-commerce being less than 10% of that market right now. It's a tremendous market opportunity. Now, this has all happened in the 4G era. We've not even actually touched or launched 5G as yet. So the obvious question is, what will 5G bring in? And this is what 5G is expected to do. 5G is expected to drive a digital transformation across all the industries that we know of, right? It will drive what we call as Industry 4.0, and the architecture remains very similar. Basically, we have a connect platform, we have a cloud platform, we have the logic or the algorithms or the apps on top of it. And on top of that, we build use cases or business cases which drive the industry. This is all an evolution. So let's just look at how we will actually implement something like this when 5G comes into picture. Now, I could actually talk about the implementation for a few hours, but in the interest of time, let me just try and summarize this and simplify this in the next 3 to 4 minutes. So let's dive in. Whenever we look at any business opportunity or a use case, we are looking at basically two types of customers, right? One is the consumer side of things, and the other one is the enterprise side of things. Now, when I talk about consumer, it could actually start from a simple mobile handset, basically devices, or it could be home automation, home security, anything to do with vehicles, etc., etc. So there's a lot of use cases on the consumer side. When I talk about it from the enterprise perspective, again, a lot of use cases come in there, mainly around connectivity and cloud. Now, when I say connectivity, this could actually mean internal connectivity for that enterprise. Most of the enterprises are today connected on either a LAN network, local area network, or a Wi-Fi, more prominent these days. And we are actually looking at technology which could actually combine everything from an internal and external perspective, which means that could I actually have one technology that connects the enterprise from an external perspective and also use that same technology internal to the enterprise? And that's where private 5G comes into picture. Now, if I just complete this picture, both the enterprises and the consumers are connected by some of the MNOs, which is mobile network operators, who own the Connect platform as on today. And the data center or the cloud platforms are actually owned either by MNOs itself or the cloud players, right? That's where the OTTs and the cloud sit. And if I look at the overall content market, they've come out with very different consumption models and business models for the enterprise market. Things like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. Now, we've all seen these different kinds of consumption models and the business models like public cloud, private cloud, or hybrid cloud, which are growing. The point that I'm trying to make is when 5G comes out as a technology, we could actually see very, very similar consumption models and business models. Let me give you an example. On the consumer side, when we launch 5G, we could be looking at use cases which are using the public 5G network, which is a shared network, very similar to what we do in the 4G world today. Now, some of these use cases could actually have very stringent SLAs, and operators might choose to offer those SLAs to the end customers. Some use cases might also require network slicing. Now, when I say network slicing, the primary use cases will be enhanced mobile backhaul, or URLLC, which is the ultra low latency applications. Things like vehicle communications will require us to actually slice the network from end to end, from the RAN to the transport into the core, and create a slice which has a very different SLA and a very different set of configuration parameters end to end from a network perspective. Now, this is on the consumer side. When we go into the enterprise side of things, things could start getting a little more complex on the models which get created. This is where private 5G comes into the picture, and some of the very large enterprises, let's say a mine or let's say a car manufacturing facility, might want to use 5G as a technology to actually control their process automation and control systems. This is where private 5G comes into the picture, and there will be two business models that people and research will be looked at. One is a private 5G network, which is managed by the MNO. So it's like a managed services offering. And the other model is a fully private network actually owned and managed by the enterprise itself. Now, a lot needs to be done to actually enable these technologies on the spectrum side of things, on the architecture side of things, which the industry is obviously working on. And you'll hear a lot more about these aspects in other presentations in this forum. So with that, let me conclude the session with this broad picture in mind and the use cases in mind. And thank you very much again for attending. And I'll be very happy to have more discussions, brainstorming, and I hope a lot more collaboration happens in the industry on this journey to 5G. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gautam, for such a wonderful presentation.